Julius Caesar, the dictator of the Roman Republic, was assassinated on March 15, 44 BC, a day known historically as the Ides of March. His murder was the result of a conspiracy led by around 60 Roman senators, with the primary instigators being Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus, who feared Caesar's increasing power and his recent appointment as dictator in perpetuity. The conspirators believed Caesar was on the verge of declaring himself king and overthrowing the Roman Senate, thereby ending the Republic. The assassination took place during a Senate meeting at the Theater of Pompey, where Caesar was attacked by the group of senators. The conspirators had planned the murder carefully, exploiting the Senate setting, where Caesar would be unarmed and isolated. Caesar was stabbed 23 times, although historical accounts suggest that only one wound, a stab to his chest, was fatal. Ancient sources differ on whether his famous last words, et tu, Brute, Latin for and you, Brutus, or even you, Brutus, were actually spoken. Some believe this was a later dramatization by Shakespeare, while other historical sources like Suetonius suggest that Caesar may have simply covered his face in silence when he saw Brutus among the attackers. This dramatic event shocked Rome. Although the assassins declared they had restored the Republic, their actions instead led to widespread unrest. Caesar's popularity with the Roman populace meant that his death was not met with celebration, but with public outrage. The immediate aftermath saw civil war break out between Caesar's supporters, led by Mark Antony and Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, and the forces of the assassins, ultimately leading to the fall of the Roman Republic. This civil war culminated in Octavian's victory, who would go on to become the first Roman emperor under the name Augustus Caesar, marking the beginning of the Roman Empire. The assassination of Julius Caesar inadvertently led to the end of the Roman Republic and the birth of the Roman Empire. It triggered years of civil war, reshaping Roman governance and cementing Caesar's legacy as one of the most consequential figures in history. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, was assassinated on April 14, 1865, at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. Lincoln was attending a performance of the play Our American Cousin with his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, and two guests, Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée, Clara Harris. The group was seated in a specially prepared presidential box above the stage. At around 10:15 p.m., John Wilkes Booth, a well-known actor and fervent supporter of the Confederate cause, entered the box undetected. Armed with a small Derringer pistol, Booth shot Lincoln in the back of the head at point-blank range. Major Rathbone attempted to stop Booth but was stabbed in the process. Booth then leapt from the box to the stage, reportedly shouting, "Sic semper tyrannis," meaning, "Thus always to tyrants," or "This is what happens to tyrants," before fleeing the theater. Lincoln was immediately carried across the street to the Peterson House, where doctors worked in vain to save his life. He never regained consciousness and died the following morning at 7:22 a.m. The assassination occurred just days after Confederate General Robert E. Lee's surrender, signaling the end of the Civil War. John Wilkes Booth, alongside his conspirators, initially planned to kidnap Lincoln but changed the plot to assassination after the war's end. Booth hoped to revive the Confederate cause by creating chaos in the Union government. His plan also included the assassinations of Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward, but those attempts were unsuccessful. Lincoln's assassination was a devastating blow to the nation, plunging it into a period of uncertainty during the fragile process of Reconstruction. Vice President Andrew Johnson assumed the presidency, but his policies toward the defeated South lacked Lincoln's vision for healing the nation. The assassination marked a turning point in American history, signaling the start of deep political divisions that would affect Reconstruction efforts for years to come. James A. Garfield, the 20th President of the United States, was shot on July 2, 1881, by Charles J. Guiteau at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C. Guiteau, a disgruntled and mentally unstable office seeker, had become fixated on the belief that Garfield owed him a diplomatic position after his minor contribution to Garfield's campaign. When his requests for a government post were repeatedly denied, Guiteau turned to violence, convinced that assassinating the president would unify the Republican Party and elevate Vice President Chester A. Arthur to the presidency. Garfield was shot twice, once in the arm and once in the back. Although the wounds themselves were not immediately fatal, it was the medical treatment he received that ultimately led to his death. Doctors repeatedly probed Garfield's wounds with unsterilized instruments, introducing infections that worsened over time. For more than 2 months, Garfield suffered from sepsis and abscesses that ravaged his body. Despite numerous medical efforts, including attempts by inventor Alexander Graham Bell to locate the bullet using a metal detector, the infection spread uncontrollably. Garfield was taken to a seaside cottage in Elberon, New Jersey, in a final attempt to aid his recovery, but he succumbed to his injuries on September 19, 1881. Garfield's assassination became a pivotal moment in U.S. history, leading to significant reforms in the civil service. The outrage over his death inspired the passage of the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act in 1883, which aimed to reduce corruption and the patronage system that had emboldened individuals like Guiteau. Additionally, his assassination attracted global attention, marking one of the first high-profile events to be extensively covered by telegraph, linking nations in shared mourning. William McKinley, the 25th President of the United States, was assassinated on September 6, 1901, while attending the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York. McKinley had been greeting the public inside the Temple of Music when Leon Czolgosz, a 28-year-old anarchist, approached him under the guise of shaking hands. Concealing a revolver under a handkerchief, Czolgosz fired 2 shots at point-blank range into the president's chest and abdomen. McKinley initially appeared to be recovering after undergoing emergency surgery, during which 1 bullet was found lodged in his chest, while the other remained in his abdomen. The surgical team, operating under difficult conditions without adequate equipment, chose not to pursue the second bullet to avoid further stressing the president. McKinley's condition seemed to improve for a few days, and there was widespread hope that he would recover. However, by September 13th, McKinley's health rapidly deteriorated due to gangrene that had developed in his wounds. He succumbed to his injuries early on September 14th, just 8 days after the shooting. His death instigated a significant change in American security protocols, as it directly led to significant reforms, including the formation of the Secret Service's role in presidential protection. McKinley's assassination left the U.S. in shock, ushering in Theodore Roosevelt as his successor. Roosevelt's presidency heralded a shift toward more progressive domestic and foreign policies, making McKinley's death a significant moment in American political history. The anarchist movement, which Czolgosz associated with, was discredited further, and his execution followed swiftly on October 29, 1901. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg, were assassinated on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo, Bosnia-Herzegovina. This assassination is widely regarded as the catalyst for the start of World War I. The Archduke and his wife were on an official visit to Sarajevo, where tensions were high due to the recent annexation of Bosnia by Austria-Hungary. Serbian nationalists in the region, part of a revolutionary group known as Young Bosnia, were determined to resist Austro-Hungarian rule. The assassination was meticulously planned by Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old Bosnian Serb, and 5 other conspirators, who were provided with weapons and support by the Black Hand, a secret nationalist organization with ties to the Serbian military. Earlier that day, one of the conspirators, Nedeljko Kabrinović, threw a bomb at the Archduke's motorcade, but it bounced off the car and exploded nearby, injuring bystanders. Ferdinand and Sophie continued with their schedule, including a visit to Sarajevo's City Hall. Afterward, they decided to visit those injured in the earlier bombing attempt. On their way to the hospital, their driver took a wrong turn, coincidentally passing by Princip, who was standing on a street corner. Seizing the opportunity, Princip stepped forward and fired 2 shots at close range. 1 bullet struck Ferdinand in the neck, while the other hit Sophie in the abdomen. Both succumbed to their wounds within minutes. Ferdinand's final words were reportedly to his wife, "Sophie, Sophie, don't die. Stay alive for our children." The assassination triggered a rapid escalation of tensions across Europe, leading to the July Crisis and Austria-Hungary's declaration of war on Serbia a month later. This event set off a domino effect, drawing all the major European powers into World War I, a conflict that would claim millions of lives and alter the course of the 20th century. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand not only sparked the first global conflict, but it also led to the collapse of empires, including Austria-Hungary, and significantly reshaped the political landscape of Europe. The fallout from this event continues to influence international relations and is a key lesson in the dangers of nationalism and political instability. Mahatma Gandhi, one of the most influential leaders of the 20th century, was assassinated on January 30, 1948, in New Delhi, India. Known for his philosophy of non-violence and his pivotal role in India's independence from British rule, Gandhi was shot by Nathuram Godse, a Hindu extremist, during a multi-faith prayer meeting at Birla House. Gandhi had spent his final years advocating for peace and reconciliation between Hindus and Muslims, following the partition of India and Pakistan in 1947, a stance that enraged Hindu nationalists like Godse. At 5:17 p.m., Gandhi, escorted by his two grandnieces, Manu and Abha, was walking towards the prayer grounds when Godse approached and shot him 3 times at point-blank range. Gandhi's final words were reportedly, "He Ram," a call to God, as he collapsed to the ground. Godse, who had long harbored grievances against Gandhi's efforts to appease Muslims, was immediately apprehended by the crowd. He believed Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence had weakened India and that his efforts had unfairly favored Muslims during the partition. Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, in a broadcast that evening, mournfully announced, "The light has gone out of our lives and there is darkness everywhere." The assassination shocked the world. Riots broke out across India in the aftermath of the murder, and Gandhi's funeral on the banks of the Yamuna River in Delhi drew massive crowds, with his body carried in a slow-moving procession through the streets. Gandhi's assassination left India at a crossroads, especially with escalating tensions between religious communities. Internationally, Gandhi was revered for his advocacy of peace and civil rights, influencing leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. His death emphasized the dangers of communal hatred and became a moment of global reflection on the principles of nonviolence and tolerance. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was assassinated on November 22, 1963, while riding in an open-top limousine through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. Kennedy was in the motorcade with his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy, Texas Governor John Connally, and Connally's wife, Nellie. As the motorcade turned onto Elm Street, shots rang out at 12:30 p.m. Kennedy was struck by 2 bullets, one in the neck and another fatal shot to the head, fired from the 6th floor of the nearby Texas School Book Depository. Governor Connally was also hit, but survived the attack. The assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine who had defected to the Soviet Union and later returned to the U.S., was arrested just 70 minutes after the shooting. 2 days later, while being transferred from Dallas Police Headquarters, Oswald was shot and killed by nightclub owner Jack Ruby, an event captured live on national television. Kennedy was rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital, but doctors could not save him, and he was pronounced dead at 1 p.m. Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as president on Air Force One just hours later, with Jacqueline Kennedy standing by in her blood-stained pink suit. The assassination of Kennedy sent huge shockwaves across the globe. It was a time of intense political and social unrest in the United States, with the Cold War at its height, and Kennedy's death deeply impacted the American psyche. The Warren Commission, tasked with investigating the assassination, concluded that Oswald acted alone, but the event has since spawned numerous conspiracy theories, many of which dispute this official account. Kennedy's assassination left the United States in a state of national mourning. It marked a tragic end to the era of optimism and progress associated with his presidency, known as Camelot. His death significantly altered U.S. politics and led to widespread distrust in government institutions, particularly as conspiracy theories spread rapidly. Kennedy's assassination remains one of the most analyzed and debated events in modern history. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the prominent leader of the American Civil Rights Movement, was assassinated on April 4, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee. King had traveled to Memphis to support striking African-American sanitation workers who were protesting against poor wages and working conditions. The day before his assassination, King delivered his famous "I've been to the mountaintop" speech, reflecting on the threats to his life and his dedication to the cause of justice and equality. At 6:01 p.m., while standing on the balcony outside his room 306 at the Lorraine Motel, King was shot by a single bullet that struck him in the neck and jaw, causing fatal injuries. Despite being rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital, King was pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m. The assassin, James Earl Ray, a convicted felon and zealous segregationist, fired the shot from a boarding house across the street from the motel. A massive manhunt followed, and Ray was captured 2 months later in London and subsequently handed over to the United States. He pleaded guilty to the murder and was sentenced to 99 years in prison, though he later denied his earlier confession, fueling conspiracy theories about the assassination. King's assassination sparked national outrage, with riots breaking out in over 100 cities across the U.S., including Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Baltimore. The violent unrest resulted in significant destruction and dozens of deaths. In response to the tragedy, President Lyndon B. Johnson declared a national day of mourning and called for the passage of the Fair Housing Act, which King had long championed. King's death marked a turning point in the civil rights movement, leading to the radicalization of some factions while also solidifying his legacy as an icon of nonviolent resistance. The assassination further deepened racial tensions in the U.S. and highlighted the dangers faced by those advocating for equality. His legacy is honored annually with Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a federal holiday established in 1983. Anwar Sadat, the third president of Egypt, was assassinated on October 6, 1981, during a military parade in Cairo that marked the 8th anniversary of Egypt's success in the Yom Kippur War. The attack was carried out by Islamic extremists, led by Lieutenant Khalid Islambouli, who were part of the radical group Egyptian Islamic Jihad. They vehemently opposed Sadat's peace treaty with Israel, a groundbreaking agreement signed in 1979 as part of the Camp David Accords. This treaty, which earned Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin the Nobel Peace Prize, had isolated Egypt from much of the Arab world and made Sadat a target for extremists. During the parade, Islambouli and his co-conspirators were part of the military procession. As their vehicle passed the overseeing stand where Sadat sat, Islambouli forced the driver to stop, then ran towards the platform, throwing grenades. Although only one grenade detonated, it caused significant chaos. In the following moments, Islambouli and his fellow attackers opened fire with AK-47 rifles, hitting Sadat and other officials. The attack lasted just 2 minutes, but Sadat, along with 10 others, was fatally wounded. Despite being airlifted to a nearby military hospital and undergoing emergency surgery, Sadat succumbed to his injuries 2 hours later. The attack also wounded many others, including Egypt's then Vice President, Hosni Mubarak, who would later become president. Sadat's assassination was a direct response to his peace efforts with Israel and his stance against Islamic extremism. Sadat's assassination created a shift in Egypt's political scene. His assassination highlighted the rise of Islamic fundamentalism and demonstrated the deep divisions in Egyptian society. His successor, Hosni Mubarak, took a much more authoritarian approach, clamping down on Islamist groups and reversing some of Sadat's policies. Internationally, the assassination disrupted peace efforts in the Middle East, though Egypt's peace treaty with Israel remained intact. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India and the first woman to hold the office, was assassinated on October 31, 1984, at her residence in New Delhi by 2 of her Sikh bodyguards, Beant Singh and Satwant Singh. The assassination was a direct retaliation for Operation Blue Star, a controversial military operation ordered by Gandhi in June 1984 to remove Sikh militants from the Golden Temple in Amritsar, a sacred site for Sikhs. The military action, which involved significant loss of life and damage to the temple, intensified tensions within the Sikh community, especially among extremists. On the morning of her assassination, Indira Gandhi was on her way to an interview with British actor Peter Ustinov, who was filming a documentary. As she walked through the garden of her residence at Safdarjung Road, Beant Singh, whom Gandhi had trusted as a close personal guard for over a decade, shot her 3 times with a revolver. After she collapsed, Satwant Singh fired 30 rounds from a submachine gun, ensuring her death. Gandhi was rushed to the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, where doctors tried to save her, but she was declared dead by 2:20 p.m. The assassination unleashed immediate and violent consequences. In the days following her death, anti-Sikh riots erupted across India, particularly in Delhi, where mobs targeted Sikh communities. Over 3,000 Sikhs were killed in the riots, leading to widespread criticism of the government for its failure to control the violence. The assassination also put her son, Rajiv Gandhi, into the prime ministerial role, where he would lead the country in the aftermath of this tragic event. Indira Gandhi's assassination impacted Indian history, showcasing the deep divisions within the country. Her death strained the relationship between the Indian government and the Sikh community, a divide that still echoes today. Gandhi is remembered for her strong leadership, but her decisions, particularly Operation Blue Star, remain a controversial topic, leaving a legacy of bitterness and violence. Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister of Israel, was assassinated on November 4, 1995, after attending a peace rally in Tel Aviv's Kings of Israel Square, now Rabin Square. Rabin, who had led Israel through pivotal moments, including the Oslo Accords, was committed to finding a peaceful resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The rally, which drew over 100,000 people, was a public display of support for the peace process, despite growing opposition from right-wing factions within Israel. After delivering a speech that evening, Rabin was walking towards his car when Yigal Amir, a Jewish extremist opposed to the Oslo Accords, approached and shot him twice in the back with a semi-automatic pistol. Rabin was rushed to Ichilov Hospital, where doctors fought to save his life. Despite briefly regaining a pulse, Rabin succumbed to his injuries at 11:02 p.m., having sustained severe damage to his spleen and lungs. Amir was arrested at the scene, showing no remorse and claiming that he acted to prevent what he saw as a betrayal of Jewish land. Rabin's assassination shocked Israel and the world. He had been a military hero and the architect of Israel's victories in earlier wars, but he had also transformed into a leader advocating for peace with the Palestinians. His death threw the peace process into disarray, worsening divisions within Israeli society and derailing the momentum toward a long-term resolution to the conflict. Rabin's assassination marked a significant setback for peace efforts in the Middle East. His death symbolized the deepening divisions within Israeli society, between those who sought peace through negotiation and those who opposed concessions. The shock waves of his assassination are still felt today, as Israel continues to grapple with the complexities of achieving lasting peace in the region. Benazir Bhutto, Pakistan's first female prime minister and the leader of the opposition Pakistan People's Party, was assassinated on December 27, 2007, during an election rally in Rawalpindi, Pakistan. Bhutto was campaigning ahead of the general elections scheduled for January 2008, aiming to return to power after years in exile. Despite facing death threats from extremists, Bhutto remained defiant, determined to participate in the election and restore democracy in Pakistan. The rally was held at Liaquat Bagh, a historic park named after another Pakistani prime minister, Liaquat Ali Khan, who had also been assassinated in the same location. As Bhutto left the rally in her bulletproof vehicle, she stood through the sunroof to wave to her supporters. At that moment, a gunman fired shots at her, hitting her in the neck and chest. Seconds later, a suicide bomber detonated an explosive near the vehicle, killing at least 23 people and injuring dozens more. Bhutto was rushed to Rawalpindi General Hospital, where she was declared dead at 6:16 p.m. The exact cause of death remains disputed. Some reports suggest she died from gunshot wounds, while others claim that the force of the explosion caused her head to strike the sunroof, leading to fatal injuries. Her death sent shockwaves across Pakistan, sparking violent riots and widespread mourning. The assassination had profound political ramifications for Pakistan. Bhutto's death marked the loss of one of Pakistan's most prominent democratic leaders and plunged the country into a deeper political crisis. Within weeks of her death, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency and Pakistani officials named Baitullah Mehsud, a militant linked to al-Qaeda, as the mastermind behind the assassination, although Mehsud denied any involvement. Bhutto's assassination led to the postponement of the general elections, and in September 2008, her husband, Asif Ali Zardari, assumed the presidency. Bhutto remains a symbol of hope and democracy for many Pakistanis, despite the controversy surrounding her political career. Thank you for watching this video. What are your thoughts on it? Please let us know in the comments what you would like to see covered next, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Until next time.